Hey there, and welcome back to the show. Today we have Sean Sanders on the show. Today's topic is Beyond Bitcoin, and our tagline is Investors have lost interest in the stock market recently, turning their attention to cryptocurrencies instead. Where is this going next? Today on the show we have Sean Sanders. He is the CEO and founder of Revix, a crypto-focused investment platform that's raised $4 million recently to expand into Europe and to launch a variety of crypto and theme-based investment products. He's a CFA Charter holder and he comes from a background of investment banking. Before founding Revix, he started three companies, included Sataya, a proprietary trading firm, Blocktree Capital, a digital asset advisory firm, and application portal, a multi-purpose online university application system. He graduated Magna Cum Laude when completing his Bachelor of Business Science with honors in the finance at the University of Cape Town. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, David. Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's get started. So Revix, what is it and what are you doing?
So Revix, it's quite interesting. When you speak to any American, they say Revix. So you're one of the first people actually to say Revix when you've got a bit of an American accent, which is awesome. So in a nutshell, we are looking to sort of change about the way people invest in general, right? So Revix actually stands for Revolutionary Investment Experience. And that doesn't mean we want to create more of a casino effect when it comes to trading or anything like that. No, what we actually want to do is to say, listen, there's all these really fast growing themes, sectors, asset classes that exist out there. How do you, as an everyday investor, and I'm talking about the real everyday investors, not the people that are actually out there buying and selling ETFs and perhaps even buying private companies, et cetera, et cetera. I'm talking like the actual everyday Joes. How do you get exposure to these fast growing areas in a secure and engaging way? I think a lot of people go, oh, right, I'd love to invest in, let's say, AI, biotech, artificial meat, renewable energy. And then when you get to the point of execution, you're sitting there with 15 different ETFs, an ETN, an ETP. You probably don't even know what those acronyms mean. And then
I don't.
yeah, then you're having to make a decision to invest in these things. And it actually comes from my past work experience. I was working at a family office based in the United Kingdom. So a family office, wealthy guy, he hires a few analysts, a legal team, et cetera, et cetera. And he said to me, listen, I want to invest in esports as an investment category. I want to invest in, at that point in time, it was sort of before biotech became biotech, but it was sort of like modern therapeutics. And how do I get exposure to these areas? And there wasn't just an ETF that you could go buy. And it was sort of investigating these companies. How do you assign like factors to each company? And it was quite the exercise. And then when you do find an ETF, or back then it was like a mutual fund, and you find one of them to invest in, it was super complicated. Like there's 15 different fees associated with this. I mean, I'm a CFA charter holder. I'm a finance nerd. I spend my entire life looking at investment opportunities and hopefully making other people money. And I couldn't discern sort of what was included in many of these things. So for us, it's really just a case of how do we build something that just sort of removes all that noise and makes it really easy to invest in these different areas.
I see. So how would you say your product differs or your platform differs from something like Vanguard? Or are you like a version of Vanguard?
So yeah, I think Vanguard is a product, let's call it a product creator, a financial product
Okay.
creator. So they say, listen, I want to build an index fund. They've got a team that goes out there, they actually set up the fund, they get some initial capital, there's a legal team that gets involved. We're actually not the product creator per se. We would
I
potentially
see.
offer a Vanguard ETF on our platform. We sort of like if you have Robinhood, just not the trading
I
Robinhood
see.
that you know today, meet a Vanguard, and both of them sort of created a Revix. That's the way I see it, and it's just a lot more user friendly. I think people think of Robinhood being really simple. Even they maybe think of Coinbase being really simple, and maybe let me actually just say as well, we haven't even launched our theme-based products yet. We've been focused primarily on cryptocurrencies, and a lot of people have said, well, that's a very weird way to sort of get to where you're wanting to go. I mean, obviously everyone's got their own sort of journey. But for us, the big opportunity with Revix actually was to say, listen, you've got Grayscale out there at the moment. You've got Bitwise Asset Management. You've got some of these really big players which provide diversified exposure to the cryptocurrency space, but for high net worth individuals. What about the everyday person? And that's where Revix came in with our crypto bundles, which provide diversified exposure to cryptocurrencies, very much like you're buying an S&P 500 ETF, except for you buying a bundle with Revix, which is, yeah, slightly different.
I see. And how'd you get started with this idea?
How did I get that?
Specifically the crypto side.
Yeah, so I was sitting at a venture capital firm and I had started Blocktree Capital, which was probably one of the first crypto focused. And back then, I'm talking 6 years ago, crypto meant Bitcoin,
Mhm.
like one of the first Bitcoin focused investment funds out there. You would go to
Mhm.
regulators to sort of set up this fund structure and they'll say, just tell us what is the underlying asset that you're looking at, right? And you'll say, well, alternatives. And it's like, okay, well, be a little bit more specific. Like, are you a hedge fund or are you trying to be a mutual fund? And we're like, no, well, we want to be more of a passive investment vehicle that provides exposure to Bitcoin. And you'd sort of see these sort of old regulators sit there and kind of like roll down their glasses and be like, uh, you mean the magic internet money that drug launderers use and or just money launderers all the rest. And you like sit there and you're like, oh, come on, guys, like help us a little bit here. Like, let us do something. But it was incredibly difficult to sort of set up this fund. And it was something again where it became really easy to set something up if you're going to only offer the product to high net worth individuals, which is unfortunately what we landed up doing. And for me, that was like, well, hell, I can do this, and we can probably make some pretty good money doing this over the long term.
Mhm.
But A, does that solve a really big problem? Do I feel mission driven? No. And I am a mission driven individual. And on top of that, is it scalable? No, not really. I mean, unless you become, one of the top players in that space, and the probability of us doing that wasn't that high. It was like, well, no, let me rather look at something that was more scalable. Hence the idea for Revix and the idea of having these cryptocurrency bundles that essentially provided the same sort of solution, but to everyday investors.
I see. So I guess you might have touched on it a little bit prior, but can you elaborate on what you'd say your mission is?
So right now, our mission is to enable everyday people to become their own wealth manager. I suppose coming from the finance background, I have a bit
Mhm.
of an issue for some reason. I don't know why. It's not like anybody did me any harm or anything, but I've got quite a big issue of paying somebody a fee for doing very little. And if you're looking at the entire financial industry, for some reason, there's like these fees where they're like, well, you pay us for that. So it's like Visa or MasterCard. It's like, well, we set up the network to start with, therefore we take a processing fee. I have an issue with that for some reason. I don't know why. Literally, just weird thing. And the idea was to say, like, no, like you can look after your own health. Like that's something that I think's really emerged over the last, call it 100 years, really. Before that, it was like, oh, the health is, my health is determined on other factors like genetic, or even then it wasn't genetics. It was, God's will or something. And then all of a sudden, health was something that you could control. Finances, for some reason, still sitting in this realm where it's like, oh, it's out of my control. Like, I can manage my cost savings, but my investments are they've got to sit with someone else. And I was like, no.
Mhm.
I mean, you would know what to go and buy in a grocery store. You could potentially know what to invest in, and that just is a function of, I think, how engaged you are and how you want to sort of be educated about the space. And for some reason, finance, and not for some reason, I know exactly why finance has the rap of being this really complicated area that you don't want to be involved with. And that's sort of what we're looking to change.
Okay, I see. As an aside, I don't think you need a reason to feel angry about fees. I feel like fees in general are pretty anti-consumer, and everyone wants the best product available for the lowest available price.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah.
I've seen as a large trend of businesses that are going towards the low fee or no fee structure. For example, like Robinhood and Webull are trying to make stock trading available for free. And there's controversy about how they make their money. But how would you say what is your idea of a ethical way of making money as what you're doing right now? Like, what is your definition of the most ethical way to do it?
So a fee, it's weird because that technically you're paying for something, and you need to just feel that
Hmm.
you're getting a service for this fee that you're paying. And I mean, it's pure economics. If you can pay a lower fee and get the same service, then obviously you would go to that other service. Many
Right.
people are very happy paying a very premium sort of fee to going to a platform, provided that they get the right service. They'll buy an expensive watch for the status, for the service they get when they walk in a
Hmm.
store. And I think it's just about being super transparent about what you are actually charging. And again, the finance industry is not known for uh, being very
Transparency. Yeah.
transparent with fees with 100%. So what we've done is, I mean, we're not trying to have a race to the bottom. Like, let Robinhood charge no fees. Cool. I mean, we're not saying we don't want to charge you fees whatsoever. It's that we want to provide you the best customer support. And if you actually look, this
Hmm.
is, I guess, a pretty neat fact. I mean, as you can hear, I'm a South African. We operate predominantly in South Africa right now. We do have some European clients. Unfortunately, no US clients yet. Your regulator isn't a nice regulator to be playing with. So, yeah, in the US, it's sort of on our roadmap. But we have the best Trustpilot and best Google rating and reviews in the whole of Africa for any investment platform. And that's because we get back to
Hmm.
our customers in average in 13 minutes. And I mean, if you look at our sort of hiring plan, I mean, our investors initially were like, what are you doing hiring so many customer support team or so many customer support staff? And it's for that exact reason. Like a customer is willing to pay a little bit more, and more being they're actually able to pay something, provided that somebody like cares and somebody's there for them and provides them that excellent service, which is exactly what we've done.
As a adjacent business to this one, my co-founder and I run a customer service business, and we definitely understand the pain points that we see in the industry. And definitely, 13 minutes, 14 minutes is definitely above the typical average you'll see. Some
Yeah,
businesses take days to respond.
amen. I mean, banks, full stop. But I mean,
Banks
and
and medical.
medical and telcos, yes, 100%. I don't know. I think that's the big opportunity, right? And then look, it's super difficult. I mean, now that we're scaling, like you can't just hire more people indefinitely. Like, where do they all go? How do you onboard them over time? How do they get the culture? I mean,
Right.
this is what I'm experiencing right now. Like, what do we do next? I mean, maybe David, you've got experience
Hmm.
doing it. I'm like sitting here going, like, I have not scaled a business now, sitting over 100,000 customers. Like, what on earth do you do? And that's, yeah, I guess that's the next challenge that we're going to be facing.
How big's your team right now?
The team right now will be running on 30 people. I mean, we're hiring fairly aggressively, but just bearing in mind that we were sitting at a team of 12 months ago. So we've
Hmm.
had to, we can't hire people fast enough for our growth. We've had to outsource some of that. We don't particularly want to be a company that outsources. Again, we care a lot about our culture. We care a lot about the people within the
Mhm.
team. I think that's the other funny thing is that we're super picky with who we bring into the team. And we sort of have that mentality where it's like, okay, right, we want to be super slow when it comes to hiring, but I guess quick, dare I say this, quick to fire if they don't have the right sort of culture fit. And it's so much easier said than done because you bring somebody
Hmm.
on, they can be the perfect human being, but just not the right individual for that job. And that's happened a few
Hmm.
times. You know, we just have to own it. That's sort of who we've tried to be, and hopefully we are being that as well.
So out of those 30 people, how do they split up into different domains? Call it like product engineering, support, sales.
I would say at the moment, about 50 to 60% of the business is customer support.
Okay.
20% is dev, and then the remainder is more ops than anything else.
Hmm. I see. And you mentioned that you care a lot about the culture fit when you hire. What do you look for?
Whew, that's a good question as well. There's, I mean, it's like sort of when you buy the smoothie, you're not just buying the goji berries or just buying the chia seeds. Wow, that was like a very LA thing to say. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. But you're not just buying single ingredients, right? You're buying like that full mixture. And
Hmm.
that's sort of what we're looking for, right? We want somebody that's really trustworthy, that's super candid and upfront, and they've got a mentality of like excellence without the arrogance. Something which
Hmm.
I loved and I thoroughly enjoyed was prior to working at Knife Capital, which was the prior company I was at. Like just prior to that, I spent a bit of time working with a guy from Harvard and a guy from Stanford, and both of them had just graduated. And I mean, hell, I've never met more ambitious human beings in my entire life. And their work ethic, their mentality, just their whole demeanor was just quite remarkable to be around. But they had this humility, and it was sort of that
Hmm.
where I was like, I want that in my company. I want that mentality. And it's not that they were the best people in the entire world. Like hell, obviously everyone's
Hmm.
got their flaws, but they would work their asses off. And if they believed that they could be better in an area, they would work their asses off to be better in that area. And they were very candid,
Hmm.
very transparent. So it was sort of taking their personality types and applying it to Revix's hiring process. And saying, well, listen, this is our culture. Let's be very transparent about what we expect from you. We expect you to be a workaholic demon. We expect you to be hungry. We expect you to do these certain things. And if that's aligning with what you want, then fantastic. Let's make this happen.
So workaholic demon, I really like that phrase. Do you know it's a struggle to find that sort of people in the talent pool?
Yes, without a doubt. Um, all the great workaholic demons, I suppose, are employed and working like demons. So you've got to try and poach them. And then the thing is that they have got their job, right? They've got their dream job. They're kind of
Yeah.
working on what they're doing. So like enticing them across. I mean, there's only so much equity you can give away. So
Mhm.
really about timing. I mean, I'm sure you've gone through this process as well, where you're trying to find the right people for various positions. and it is incredibly challenging. I don't think it matters where you are in the world. I do think there is certain hubs. I guess New York, London, definitely.
Mhm.
San Francisco, maybe not anymore, but in the past, definitely. If you're looking for that sort of top cream talent, that's where you'd find it. The other regions around the world, sure, there is still that top echelon of individuals, really smart, skilled, ambitious humans, but they're a little bit more difficult to find, and generally you don't go out
Mhm.
and find them. You've kind of you've got to get like a recruiter to go and poach them from somewhere.
Is your company fully remote, or do you have an in-person office? How do you split it?
So we have a rather weird setup. It's a bit of both. We have sort of had this remote setup from the beginning. So we've got 2 days a week where people will be working remotely, sometimes 3 days. And then we alternate between the ops team being in and the devs team being in. And that's just so that the office isn't really like humming the entire time, because when you've got, so many
Mhm.
people in a space, you know what it's like, it gets a bit crazy. And when I'm pitching to investors or somebody else in the team's on a call and you've got like, just the craziness of an office going on in the background, that can honestly be quite disruptive.
Mhm. Okay. Well, how painful would you say the hiring problem is for you on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is your like most significant and urgent pain point, and one being like a trivial problem?
I would say, so you're saying one is not difficult or it's not a big pain area,
Correct.
10 being super painful. Nine?
Yes.
Nine? Solid
9.
nine.
Okay. Do you have any tens right now?
Do I have any? Sorry?
Do you have any tens?
Oh, right. Yes. I Scaling, I think, is like the 10 that I'm experiencing at the moment, trying to scale
Okay.
our systems.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Do you have a coach of any sort that guides you throughout the process, or how are you learning all these things, or are you just learning it from trial and error?
I do have a few mentors, but again, it's so circumstantial.
For
Like,
sure.
how do you say, listen, I've got this exact problem, what do I do? And then somebody can give you advice. And like, as an entrepreneur, I think you're always just skeptical. You're like, no, I know better. And then, do I know better? And then you have like this little battle that's happening in your head. So I have a lot of mentors and really smart people that
Okay.
I'll bounce ideas off. But I would love to have, I guess, a second in charge, which again,
Hmm.
like you sort of, do I have more money within the business to pay a second in charge? Potentially, but that's foregoing something else then.
Hmm. So how did you find these people?
How did we find the people at the beginning? So some were obtained through recruiters, which isn't,
Sorry, specifically your mentors. How'd you
oh,
find
right.
these mentors?
Right. So the mentors that I had, some were found through prior work experience. So when you work with somebody, I mean, my term that I like the most is remarkable. When you work with somebody that's remarkable, you just like, hell, like, how do I get more from this person? Um, Whether that be,
Mm-hmm.
inviting them for dinner, paying for them for dinner. I've done that on a few occasions. Sometimes just trying to set up a coffee, just like squeezing your way in there. Other times it's just good old charm, hopefully a smile, being a nice person. That works, I guess, quite efficiently as well. And then one thing that I
Mm-hmm.
did recently, and this is one of my mentors and probably one of my closest friends as well, that recently joined Revix as an investor. I actually said to him, like, listen, I'll give you this incredible discount on our company's valuation. I can just see that you are going places and you're going to do something insane with your life. How do I get you to be part of our journey so you can contribute and be economically aligned with what we're wanting to achieve? And I was fortunate enough to get him on board, and yeah, now we chat every day. He's my what do you want to call it? My bromance. He's a good friend that's an investor, and we obviously we enjoy business together.
That's neat. It's definitely a rare type of relationship.
Yeah, no, not one that I suppose you can just manufacture either, right? I mean, it's something that has to sort of happen organically. Yeah,
I do believe serendipity does play a lot in the journeys of a lot of entrepreneurs and the people they meet, and even the business ideas they come across. Yeah.
definitely. That is actually
So,
exactly true, right?
how much of your past experiences influence who you are today, both professionally and personally? And how have you been changed by your experiences?
Yes, my past experiences definitely have changed who I am, obviously, but in the sense that I wanted to be a professional athlete for a long time. And I was the
Hmm.
nerd where I could sort of apply that same sort of, I don't know, the grit that you require on the sports field. I was able to apply that to the classroom. So I definitely have some sort of a obsessive compulsive disorder, where I just start at the topic and then I just can't stop with it. And then even if I go like right now after this podcast, I'm going to go train, and I've got this one. It's a long story, but we've got essentially this one math problem within the business that we need to solve, and it's killing me that I can't solve this yet. So I
Hmm.
can, that sort of eats away at me. So my past experience when it came to like sport, as an example, it seems really weird, but you train with people that push themselves day in and day out, and for some reason you can
Hmm.
apply that process, and I think process is really important. But you apply that system or that process to fitness, but for some reason, a lot of people when they want to hone their skills, whether it be speaking or whether it be in a particular
Hmm.
business category, they don't apply that same sort of mentality of like I need to train on a regular basis. And I think that was one thing that I was fortunate some way or other to be able to apply to the business world. And at the same time, like I guess if you're looking then at my younger years, I had parents that were incredibly supportive. I mean, I'm actually scared to have kids
Hmm.
myself because of how great my parents were. Like, there's no way I could be as good as they were. So mom and dad, like
Hmm.
shout out on that front. But the the support that I got on that front, it kind of this was like if you don't go and do something remarkable with parents that have supported you in the way that you have, and I say remarkable like giving your all to something because your parents have sacrificed so
Hmm.
much for you, like what are you doing? You're wasting your time, you're wasting the sacrifice that they put forward. And it's like that little voice
Hmm.
in your head where it's, are you doing enough? Yes, I am. No, I'm not. And you kind of just fighting with yourself over that. But it's like that healthy kind of push that you get and the grit that you get from that. So yeah, it's a sort of a roundabout way to answer the question, but I think it does.
Was there a specific thing your parents did that really encouraged you or made you feel really confident in pushing yourself to, I guess, strive after entrepreneurship?
They, that's again a very good question. I can't answer that straight away. They were always there and supportive in the sense where they were like, "What do you want to achieve? Like, let's think about what the end goal is here. Is this something that's short term in nature,
Hmm.
or is it something that you're looking for in the long term? Great. If it's something in the long term, let's invest in it." And that was something that they consistently
Hmm.
did. If it was, me wanting to play professional rugby or looking to, run internationally, and I was really good at 400 and 800 meters, they would then put resources into seeing physios on a regular basis, seeing chiropractors, seeing different individuals that were able to sort of skill me up, whether it be coaches, you name it, and really going above and beyond. And that sort of mentality, again, I think it feeds through to anything else. Like you can do everything yourself, or you can look at perhaps
Hmm.
investing, and that's money and time. And I think time is the biggest thing. Like, can you focus your time on something?
Hmm.
And that's maybe what they instilled in me more than anything else.
Can you remember how early of an age the idea was instilled in you?
I've been, building different businesses from the age of 13. My first business was a sticker business, and my parents encouraged me to do this. So this was fantastic. So my
That's
uncle,
cool.
yeah, my uncle had a printing shop, if you want to call it that, like a place that like printed cards or printed like different vinyls for vehicles, for advertising, and all the rest.
Hmm.
So it was fantastic. I could go to him and be like, "Listen, I want to print all these skateboard stickers, and you can print all of them for me, but there's no input cost, right? There's no cost of goods sold. It's literally just whatever I'm able to sell these for is my profit. So revenue equals profit. Fantastic business model. Screw me
Okay.
around later in life, but I did that. Made some really good money as being a 13-year-old. I then decided, I went to an all boys high school where what does every guy from the age of say 15 through to 18 want to do? They want to get like big, fit, and strong, and they want to like be able to like walk around and like be the guy. So I was the guy that was, and remember, I was growing up in South Africa. So, the US
Hmm.
supplement market, you guys are completely spoiled in the US. If you're obviously listening to this from the US, but you're completely spoiled for with the supplements that you have, right? So here was a little import Joe bringing stuff into South Africa, selling it at a mad markup, and making a fair amount of money doing that. So that was like my second
Hmm.
business that I got into, and then I think the third business while I was in school, which was super cool, but maybe it explains partly why I got into crypto later on, is I started the poker and blackjack club which definitely was not something that was like
Okay.
a real club. But at second break, people
Hmm.
would come and they'd play poker and play blackjack, and I was the dealer. And I knew, well, poker, you sort of make a fixed return. As a blackjack dealer, the more decks of cards you put into the pack, the better your odds. And I don't think anyone else
Yeah.
in the school really just gathered that. And it sounds terrible, but like
Hmm.
I was able to like sort of skew the odds in my favor. So I made a decent amount of money doing that, and everyone had a great time.
What was your teenager marketing strategy for all these businesses?
Word of mouth. It's the same as what it is today. I mean, sure, we've got
Okay.
other marketing strategies, but the main thing really has just been, again, great customer service. Bing, there we go. It's like give them a great experience, and hopefully they'll tell their friends about it.
So, how much did you have an allowance during this time?
Oh, I did. I can't remember what it was.
How
It wasn't
how
like,
did you how does the amount of money you made from your businesses compare to your allowance? Just in case there's any kids watching the show.
oh, way more. No, I made way, way, way more money than I made in my allowance. Like, no, the allowance was always this funny thing. I was like, I didn't care about the allowance. Like, that doesn't help me do anything because
Okay.
in many of these cases, it was just like buying a poker set isn't that expensive, right? It's more like
Mhm.
how do you because and this is the same principle I apply to business and like this is something that I think I learned early on, maybe with my whole like not having any cost of goods sold thing. I don't know, but if you can just maximize revenue, and you can grow revenue at a faster rate or relative to your costs, that's what you care about. Like that's the only thing that I care about as a
Right.
CEO. I go and I've been fortunate to hire a CFO that then's able to manage the cost a bit better. But for me, it's like, what other ways can I grow this business? Because you double your revenue, hell, it's actually pretty difficult to double costs. I mean, certainly where we are now, I guess it's not too
Mhm.
difficult. But generally speaking, doubling revenue, I feel, is not that difficult. And doubling costs, you have to hire a lot of people. It's actually a lot of effort to do that.
Right, right, right. The scaling from the digital revolution is incredible, especially with engineering and especially with crypto.
Oh, it's remarkable.
The
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 Yeah,
right ones and deploy everywhere is the beauty of why software engineering is so popular as a career nowadays.
it's part of the reason why I imagine that the US has sort of grown in the way that it has. I mean, having Facebook, I mean, I suppose China's got Tencent and all the social
Mhm.
networks that go along with that. But having the likes of Facebook, having Instagram there, WhatsApp, Amazon, even the network effect with that, really, you've got these ultra scalable businesses. I think a lot of people maybe take that for granted. When you go to a lot of emerging market currency, a lot of emerging markets, you sort of see the companies that they have locally are not the same sort of scalable entities. They are
Right.
old school industrial, old school bread making, old school like entities all around where it's like you hire somebody else, you get 20 more widgets. Or it's like it's not
Right, right.
parabolic, it's a lot more linear.
And then these widgets take up physical space. You need to pay for storage. They need to pay for logistics to move them around from place to place. And you have to do about marketing on physical. Yeah, it's physical goods are definitely not on the same level of profitability as a software business, where the cost of goods sold is pretty close to zero once you have enough volume.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
So, what is your current strategy, or what's in your mind right now as it comes to doubling or tripling your revenue? Like, what comes to mind to help you get to that next level?
Unlocking other revenue streams. I think we've got to a point now where I know we've increased our marketing spend by two. We're going to get like 2x from where we are now. We'll get this many more customers just based on a pretty well defined
Mhm.
cost of customer acquisition. Now, if you're looking at
Mhm.
other revenue streams, in particular in the crypto space, I mean, what's the biggest uh, tsunami that's coming towards everyone that's invested in the space? Tax. Like the IRS in South Africa, it's the South African Revenue Service. In the UK, it's Her Majesty's Royal Tax Collection Service, so HMRC. Like they're coming for you as an
Mhm.
investor, right? At some point, they are going to ask you, have you, and they're
Mhm.
asking you already. And for us, like, hell, that's a big opportunity, right? A lot of people are going to need that to be dealt with. So we now are building out a new division within the business that's going to be able to serve that
Mhm.
in a scalable fashion. Another thing is, what's another thing a lot of customers care about within the business? Okay, right. So for us, customers want to actually be able to get insurance on their cryptocurrency because people don't realize this, but when your exchange, no exchange is mentioned here, but when your exchange says that they've got insurance and they've got various custody protections, they've got insurance for like 1/1,000,000th of the assets that they have in custody, which means that should
Hmm.
there actually be a breach, you are in trouble. So a lot of our customers are saying, well, we'd love to have like an additional insurance product. So again, rolling that out and trying to get that out as from like an MVP standpoint very quickly. So those are the sort of areas we're looking at, sort of very small tests in different areas, and as soon as something grabs, we kind of double down on it.
Hmm. How many people do you have in charge of coming up with new products within your company, or are you the head one?
There's three of us really. One of the guys in my team, a head of product, came to me this week. By head of product, it's more head of product development rather than sort of coming up with the creative
Hmm.
ideas around it. But he was like, "Listen, Sean,
Mhm.
we've got all the components to launch this new product, which I don't think I can mention just yet. But like, we've got all the components to do this. Like, why don't we go ahead and do that?
Okay.
We're busy testing that right now, and hopefully within the next, I don't know,
Hmm.
2 weeks, we'll have like a very basic MVP that we can then trial with 5 or 10 customers."
Do you ever set aside a day where you're like, this is our brainstorming day and we're going to do nothing but brainstorm new ideas? Is that something you've considered or something you've done?
I think that would be a fantastic idea. I have not done it yet, unfortunately, though. I'm almost certain that
Okay.
that would be remarkable. We've sat before saying, like, listen, this is the vision that we're going for. And like the team's
Mhm.
weighed in, and I'm talking maybe a year and a half ago. But that's the sort of stuff where you like, you read a business book and you're like, that is what we should do. And then when, you've
Mhm.
got 30 things that need to be done by the end of the month and everyone's
For
stressed,
sure.
it's just a little bit more difficult, I suppose, to do. I mean, to throw that question back at you, with your other companies, do you guys do that?
We try to do that every once in a while. I think that it's just so much. There's so much value in terms of taking a step away from the day-to-day operations. Of course, it's definitely a privilege to be able to step away from the day-to-day operations, knowing that you have team leaders in place to handle everything, just to focus on the strategy and vision for the company. I think that affects the long term a lot more. When I say long term, I usually think of something 24 months and beyond. And I think it's I'd like to believe it's crucial and almost irreplaceable to set aside that time. But that said, we're yet to be 24 months into business, so who knows whether the things we plan today actually come to fruition. But if nothing else, you get the bouncing of ideas and the team camaraderie around like a shared spirit of goals. I think it's just pretty neat.
Definitely. I mean, people like to build something that they've thought of, right? So, like if you have
Yeah.
somebody in your team that comes up with a new process, I always encourage that because I mean that's amazing. Like that person will own that. They'll feel proud about implementing that. Like it's very basic. I mean, I feel the sense of I don't know, like attachment to Revix because I've come up with a lot of the ideas, and now
Hmm.
slowly but surely, everyone in my team is like better than me at pretty much everything across the business. So, like you've heard this before, I'm sure, but where you as the CEO or founder, you're looking at hiring people to make you obsolete. And I'm getting pretty damn
Yeah.
close, which is super cool.
You'll find new problems to tackle. There's an infinite number of problems that'll come your way. And
Definitely,
even if nothing else, you're at the end of the day, you're the one responsible, ultimately responsible for all of the judgment calls that everyone else makes, which is
definitely.
still a non-trivial role.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. It's fun when you're sitting with people that are smarter than you and you feel dumb in a room. That's like my moment that I treasure the most when I'm building any business. I mean, I had a proprietary trading firm before this, which like essentially we bought and sold. I had two traders that I hired, really smart guys that would literally, I mean, they were quants, both of them, but we were trading everything from koi fish to Hermes handbags across regions, taking advantage of like currency swaps. It was like crazy. It was like so much fun, just not anything that was scalable either, but like a pretty cool side hustle. And the funniest thing, I suppose, is when you sit in those rooms and like in particular with those two quants, and you just feel dumb. You're like they're talking, and you're like, oh gosh, I can't even say anything because like these two guys are. And I'm getting that all the time now when I sit with my team. They'll be talking about things, and you're like, oh my word, like what are you guys on about? And you like, it's not that you're scared to ask a question, but you kind of you at least feel that where you're like, wow, is this a dumb question? Awesome.
At some level, there's also just there's a huge spectrum of domains within the scope of the world of business, right? I'm not
Yeah,
sure if you've read his book, but Ray Dalio has his book called Principles, and I think his forward to his book talks about the fact that he knows very little about how the world works. He actually, I really appreciate the honesty because I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we all have a microscopic view of how the world actually works, and we use that microscopic view, and like that's the lens through which we view everything else, though it could be frequently wrong. And the younger you are, the less judgment you've built up. You're probably more frequently wrong, but over time it gets better and better over time.
Without a doubt. And I love that book. I mean, the idea of an idea meritocracy, I mean, it's something I've carried through with Revix, I mean, since we launched it. And actually, on all of our job posts, we sort of started in a lot of what Bridgewater does and has said in the past. Like,
Mm.
obviously, started with pride in a positive way. But I agree with you. I think when you sort of look at everything, I call it from a third person perspective. You kind of take a step back and you're like, holy hell, you made these decisions, but you don't know the probability of something being a success or not, right? You're just using gut intuition for everything, thinking that you know what the outcome is.
Mhm.
It's the funniest thing.
I think it's so. I spent the past decade around the Silicon Valley area, and it's very interesting how there's this core like attraction to this idea of being like metric driven. But the metrics are a function of whatever you measure, and the things you measure are a function of your gut intuition. So ultimately, everything is just a function of gut intuition at some level, anyways.
We're
And like
humans,
there's
right?
so much
Yeah.
bias in the things you choose to measure, so there's no true objectivity when it comes to like metrics.
Are you a nihilist out of curiosity?
No, I'm not a nihilist, but I do appreciate some of the thoughts that nihilists have. I think there's there's a lot of hope in the world, and I definitely would not consider myself a nihilist. But there has been stages in my life where I've strongly considered it. Why
Good
do you
man.
ask?
No, I think it's just when you're saying like, well, eh, do I actually know the answer to this? Does it even have meaning if I say that I do know the answer or I don't? I mean, no one's going to know until it actually happens. I think that's
Mm,
the other fascinating thing, right? Is that you, there's a brilliant book by Annie Conaway called Thinking in Bets, which is exactly about this, which is like the system that you use to make a decision and the probabilities that you're weighing up in your head, which you'll never be able to truly quantify most of the time. It has to be
right,
separated from the outcome of that decision. And you never know the
right,
objective alternative, right? Which is like, if you make this
right.
decision, is it binary or is there a million different outcomes that could occur? And 9 times out of 10, I mean, depends on sort of the decision that's being made, but there's so many different outcomes that can occur as well. So like we're actually just walking around thinking that we know the outcome of something when we truly don't. So it's kind of just reinforcing what you said earlier. Like we're super confused, we're running around like headless chickens thinking we know stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Our brains are so built just to accept every form of reinforcement, even if we if we predict the outcome correctly, but if the process through which we predict the outcome is incorrect, we will still hold to our original thought processes, even if they're wrong. And I think I can't remember if the number is accurate, but I've heard it takes somewhere around 3 to 5 times. You have to hear the facts 3 to 5 times to kick out an incorrect way of thinking. And I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Can you imagine the impact that that has on business, right? 3 or 5 mistakes is really, yeah, crazy.
You mentioned something earlier that I totally resonate with. Every entrepreneur thinks they know their business super well. And I mean, granted, they probably do, but there's just some components of the business where they think they're right against industry standards. And the thing about entrepreneurship is you need to be, if you want to hit the real jackpot, you have to be both contrarian and correct, but that's not very frequent. That's odds are that happens probably less than 10% of the time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it is incredibly difficult to do that. I mean, part of Revix's journey as well, like having this conviction that crypto is going to be something that is going to enable Revix to propel what we're offering from a cryptocurrency product into like all these other theme-based products. Like that was something that I sat there and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, are you wrong? Are you just seeing something that no one else is like, and it was not no one else, but I mean, there wasn't that many people. Like I left
Right,
a
right.
nice cushy executive job, young dude, getting paid well at that point with I got like my first PA ever. It was amazing. And when I say PA, it wasn't exactly like she was running around solely for me, but I felt like in a super cushy role. And then here's me going like, I'm going to start a business in the cryptocurrency space, and here's Bitcoin going down like 20% every single day at that point.
Mhm.
And people were like, you are nuts. And I think it was just that weird thing where it's like there's just too many smart people going into the space, and like it's too fascinating not to. And it's like listening to that little voice, which yeah, I found it impossible to ignore. And something else which is a really interesting exercise, which I think is more objective, if anyone's sort of on the fence about wanting to get into entrepreneurship or not. I come from a finance background. I essentially built financial models for businesses, for fixed income instruments, for you name it, for a very long time. And what I did, which is super nerdy, is I went and I created a discounted cash flow model, which is a way you would value companies, but for myself. So I said, okay, right, how much do I expect to make
Mhm.
in perpetuity until I'm, say, 65? and I'm going to discount those cash flows back, and I just used a very moderate inflation rate, a very, I guess, like a
Hmm.
2 to 2.5% inflation rate, which is definitely going to be higher than that over the long term. And the number that I saw wasn't even like after expenses, right? That was before expenses. It's like my revenue number. And I was distraught. It was terrible. I was like, there's no way I'm accepting this. No way. I want to earn way more than this. I need to. And that's, I mean, obviously I want to have a mission behind that as well. But that was just an immediate, like, click of the fingers, black and white decision being like, you don't have a choice. You actually have to start a business or do something else to be able to kind of obtain what you want to obtain.
Hmm. What is the thing you want to obtain? Like, do you have an ultimate goal of your life? Like, by the end of your life, you want to achieve X. Do you have something like that?
I don't actually, and it hit me probably actually after this last funding round. I have set out, and I'm sure in some respects you're exactly the same, but you set out to have a goal over 12 months, hell, even every week. I mean, I've got goals
Hmm.
every day that I want to achieve, right? So you set out whatever those goals are. You achieve the small goals on a daily basis, your dopamine hits rather small. You achieve the weekly goals as well, equally small. Yearly, you know, if you have a decade goal, maybe that's like a lot bigger. But like I set out and I was like, I want a profitable business. Like that is what I want. And when I get that, I'm going to be happy. And I want to raise like, a few $1 million. And when we do that and we're able to expand Revix internationally, I'm going to be super stoked with where we are. And, it's all sunshine and rainbows. You get that, which I got. And it was immediately like, okay, now what's next? So it's the journey for me. I know like I'm like a dopamine addict, but it's the journey. It's like the roller coaster of
We
like,
all are.
yeah, and that's the thing with a startup. Like you are, for all intents and purposes, a drug addict. Where instead of having some other narcotic, you've got like the startup and the adrenaline that's like rushing through you every day. And that's I think what gets me going. To be honest, I don't know about you.
Have you heard of the phrase, or are you familiar with the phrase hedonic adaptation?
No, no. Can you
So
elaborate?
it describes just the phenomenon you just told me. The idea that like once you feel like there is this goal, and once you reach the goal, you'll be set, you'll be happy, and you reach the goal, and temporarily you are happy, you are ecstatic, especially if those goals are more difficult or longer term goals. And then after a while, that happiness, the dopamine kind of like fades, or you need the next hit, and you're always striving after like iterative improvements. And I think that's the idea of hedonic adaptation, where humans adapt to whatever baseline. Every new phase of life you go through is a new baseline, and it's just your brain just readapts, and that becomes a new happiness norm. And it goes in reverse too, right? Where they did studies where people went through severe like tragedies of losing, like call it car, like losing loved ones, or going through car crashes, or severe injuries to the point that they're partially disabled or fully disabled. And you think that these people like go from a happiness level of like 10 to a happiness level of 1, but after enough time they actually stabilize back to where they were previously, which is kind of interesting.
That's super fascinating. I'm definitely going to look into that. And that's totally me, like 100% to a T. I mean, the moment we raised funding recently, it was not even 30 seconds where I felt like euphoric. It was literally like, and now what? Now it's like the stress changes to like, oh, now you don't need money anymore. Well, not for the short term, but you need to now build this awesome product. Guys, build the product, like go crazy for that, which is, yeah, it's bizarre. It's super weird.
I think that just every human like it's innate in our human nature to always want more than what we have, and
Yeah.
striving for that next thing is, I think, what makes entrepreneurship really interesting. I used to be in like a more corporate engineering role, and I think there's so many times where I feel like I didn't get that dopamine hit that I wanted, just because I didn't feel like I was pushing myself. And I think that's part of the draw of entrepreneurship. You want that unlimited potential, and you want to be in the same position. Maybe you want to be in the same position, maybe you don't. I don't know if you want to be CEO for the rest of your life. Some people want to do it for temporary time. Some people want to do it as like a lifelong, like just part of their extension of their personality. But regardless of the reason, the next, as long as there's a next thing to strive after, be it in some form of improvement, either in the form of business or personal, is what I've seen to be motivating for myself and a lot of other people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny. I did this calculation to be able to say like my net worth, if I continue in corporate, is this amount, and I wasn't happy with that.
Hmm.
But I'm totally not driven by money. I haven't paid myself a salary. Well, I didn't pay myself a salary for like 15 months, and I did it with like happiness. I was just like, I want to make sure
Hmm.
that the business has got additional cash to run, and it wasn't like a decision. It was literally just like that's what I want. So immediately, I kind of looked
Hmm.
back. And I was like, you're totally not driven by money. Ironic that you made this decision based on some like monetary metric. Yeah.
I'm likewise. This is my 10th month of not having a salary and not paying myself a salary, and I've been happier more recently than I can say for a long extended while. And that's even with the adjustments of like COVID limiting my abilities in my social life to like go about and do things.
Yeah, that's super weird, right? We think we know ourselves. Maybe that's another point that we need to investigate. It's like
Mm.
we all think, hey, listen, we've got self-awareness. We do like meditation. I mean, I do some meditation. I'm sure you do
Hmm.
meditation to some degree as well. And you feel like you're in control, but are you in control? That's the other big thing. It's like, no, you've got no control probably over your life. To a large degree, most of the stuff that's happening is like completely out of your control. The way that you respond to it, I suppose you can control that, right?
Are you a practitioner of any form of major philosophy?
I'm a nihilist.
Oh,
So
you're a nihilist? Okay.
I'm a nihilist. When I say like, do I practice a philosophy? I have a little, I mean, I can pull out my diary. You're not going to be able to see it right now. But every single day in this book, like I will
Hmm.
have my diet, my training intensity, the number of hours I sleep, like anything you can possibly measure in my life, my average heart rate for the day. Like there's probably about 17 or 18 data points that I collect on a daily basis. And I think that I can put them into like some sort of an Excel document and produce correlations, which I have. I mean, my happiness and my sleep seem
Huh.
very highly correlated, but that's like me. Like I like to like quantify things and even my own happiness. I'll say subjectively, my happiness on a scale of 1 to 10 today was an 8 or a 9 or a 7 or a 3.
Hmm.
And you can sort of track that over time. And when you create a graph at the end of the year, that just shows sort of what these look like. You try random regression tests. Like this is what I enjoy doing, and you somehow just feel like, oh, I can pick up certain trends, and oh, this is when this happened, and look what happened with like your diet, and it's just yeah, it's fascinating. And yourself? What about yourself?
So I just started tracking about 35 days ago, and I've been tracking for about 65, 70 days for sleep now because I want to see correlations between my sleep and my day-to-day mood, as well as my day-to-day productivity, as well as I've been tracking calorie consumption and protein consumption, and that's just more of a like curiosity thing, and like towards like I don't know like training my body. I want to hit that next level of fitness, next level of health, lose fat, gain muscle, all that stuff, and I would loosely consider myself a biohacker, and I want to know if you consider yourself a biohacker.
I did consider myself past tense a
Okay.
biohacker. Uh,
Mm.
since I sort of started Revix, a lot of that's unfortunately sort of been put to the side. I mean, I still do
Okay.
intermittent fasting. Like right now, I've got some like magic juice that I can like say, which would be like 30 different blended ingredients and juiced and all the rest. And then I mean, I probably have about 15 different tablets every single day. Everything, yeah. So I guess to a degree, yes, I'm a biohacker, but at the same time, I'm not completely obsessed like I was before. Before
Mm.
I was completely over the top. Like, no, you need to like be training at this very point in time, and I would
I
like
see.
IV drips on a regular basis,
Mm.
like being like that's how you can like optimize your training and all the rest.
Hmm.
And then you would train like, yeah, it was just no, not something I can do. And yourself?
I don't think I've been tracking long enough to know if there's any meaningful results between the things I track and like the immediate term changes. Uh, we'll see. I think I just need more time to collect data, and I have not taken the time to draw any correlations. Have you noticed any correlations between the things that you track and your day-to-day mood?
Yes, without a doubt. My subjective view of my happiness is so heavily correlated to my change in sleeping patterns. So if I take, like, let's say my
Hmm.
weekly average sleep, so like a day is not really that valuable, but if you take like your weekly average number of hours that I've slept, and if that's, let's say, more than 6.5 to 7 hours, my happiness is significantly higher. So statistically
Hmm.
different to if I didn't get that much sleep. I would love to look at this would be actually brilliant. Something else I'll probably introduce in the future, but I'd love to look at like the Bitcoin price and be able to see my happiness as well, because I think that'll probably have a stronger correlation right now, which is really sad to say, but given my business is predicated on crypto at this point, like that's definitely something I consider. And then I do practice gratitude. So on a daily basis,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not religious, but I will every single day say there's three things that I'm super grateful for,
Hmm.
and that to me is like my like calming factor. It's like the one thing where I'm like, hell, like it doesn't matter what happens today. Like I'm so grateful for my parents. So I'm so grateful
Hmm.
for the opportunity I have with the business. Hell, being on this podcast will probably be something that I am able to say I'm grateful for, and that's the sort of stuff I like.
Hmm. Do you have a sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Do you have a specific time in your memory that you first got exposed to Bitcoin? You're like, I have to buy Bitcoin now. And what was the price back then?
Less than $1,000. well less than
Okay.
$1,000. Actually, it was probably less than $200 when I first looked at it. So I sat inside a
Mm.
London bookstore with like this paper copy Bitcoin, like what is Bitcoin thing. It must have been the first crypto book that was out there. That was like 2013, 2014. It like really wasn't mainstream. And it was at that point where I was like, what is this? Like I didn't actually register with it. To me, it was like some speculative sort of investment, had no idea really any fundamental idea around what it was and all the rest. And then funny enough, this is like an incredibly interesting story about how I got into crypto. And I'll give you the elevator pitch. But I landed up managing some money because when I was in university, part of a side hustle that I was fortunate enough to get into was modeling. So like I got asked by
Hmm.
a few modeling agencies from around the world to go and do some acting gigs, some television commercials, some stills and all the rest. And I was flying kind of while I was studying to a few different places. And I mean, it's like the perfect job to have while you're a student. And funny enough, like I earned so much money. This is like such a cool story to say, but I earned more money when I was a student, when I was 19, than I've earned ever since. And like I had great
Huh.
finance, right? It was just like for like this very brief period in my life where I was modeling, it was just like fantastic jobs. And I was like, this is so cool. But while I was doing that, I met a whole bunch of models from around the world. And one thing that models have in common is that they just seem to be terrible with their finances. Like the movies don't lie. So I saw this opportunity really. I mean, this is 20-year-old, 19, 20-year-old Sean sitting there going like, listen, you're leaving your money with a modeling agency. So you arrive in LA. Back then, your modeling agency would give you a prepaid debit card or give you a wad of cash and say like, we'll keep the rest of your money. So they're acting like your bank. You go and you spend the money on the town, or we'll pay for your
Hmm.
rent, we'll do all of that stuff. And I was like, hell no, go and invest that. I'll invest it for you. I'll take a little commission
Hmm.
on this. And in no time at all, I mean, when I say we, it was like royal we, me, I had got about $2.5 million from models and
Huh.
started investing in it. Now, we're investing in various assets, some property, some stocks, and all the rest. But like that was stupid. Like you should never be doing that when you're that young and inexperienced. Not because you don't want the experience or anything, but like that's other people's money. And I don't think I understood the full ramifications of what I was
Mm.
doing. My dad's an accountant, and when my mom's a financier, and when they found out about this, it was like you shut this down right now. But but before they found out about it, one of the models that had invested a fair amount of money with me, must have invested about $850,000. She wanted to buy a house in New York, and the money was invested in the London Stock Exchange. So fine, I go and I liquidate the position or the positions on the LSE, and now I need to move the money over to New York. Now I'm sitting in South Africa at that point in time, back at university. We have exchange controls. That means that you actually
Mm.
can't bring money into South Africa or out of South Africa
Yeah,
or
yeah.
cross another border without getting exchange with South African Reserve Bank approval. It's so antiquated as a joke, but anyway, I couldn't do anything. So I was sitting there like, how on earth am I going to do this? Like,
Hmm.
I have no idea how else I'm going to like sort of get around the system. Like, I can't apply to the Reserve Bank. I don't technically, own this myself. It's somebody else's money. I'm acting in a fiduciary capacity. And I came across this thing called Bitcoin. And I was like, that book that I read about, that was like this digital internet money stuff.
Hmm.
And that was my first experience. I managed to get
Hmm.
that that amount of money into Bitcoin. Again, super high risk, but like back then, it was incredibly volatile. You're talking like 30% moves on a weekly basis,
Hmm.
like pretty normal. And I remember just like biting my nails, being like, please just go in my favor. And it did. I mean, I ended up walking away with a small amount of money. And she landed up buying the apartment, and yeah, it was a good experience. But I was like, wow, that was cool. And I didn't really understand even then that I was dealing with Bitcoin, which was like completely peer to peer and decentralized. To me, it was still just like, oh, I just managed to move money without having to like apply to my reserve bank, which was
Hmm.
really neat at that point in time.
So you're telling me back when Bitcoin is almost, call it under $200, you bought $850,000 worth of Bitcoin and you sent it to someone across the internet.
I would have bought an incredible amount of Bitcoin. I would be completely lying what number of Bitcoin I would have bought. But yes, if I had somehow managed to just hold on to that today, I mean, you always have the "I told you so" stories. I mean,
For sure.
even like look, like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I ended up buying an insane amount of Bitcoin, like putting at least 80% of my net worth into BTC for a period of time. Um,
Hmm.
and that was to earn a yield, essentially like taking advantage of like the different staking mechanisms. There's like early days, not even DeFi,
Yeah.
but like being able to earn a yield on that. And I remember having like it was a lot of Bitcoin back then, and today I'll be like, oh my gosh, if I had that many Bitcoin, I'd be I'd be sorted. But I would like it would be like next to yeah. Have you had that
Do
much?
you have, I have I am the way I view my life is I try to balance risk across different segments. So I think in taking the step into entrepreneurship, you're taking a huge financial risk. So I feel like I want to shift my portfolio to something higher risk to something lower risk. So I'm doing the strategy that you did, where I'm just buying a bunch of stable coins, taking advantage of the yield, just because the yield is way better than anything you can get for like effectively like a low risk moderate return. Like I call 14% pretty darn good for effectively minimal risk, and it's just what you get for loaning out stablecoin, which I think is a great deal for me for this stage of my life.
Yeah, so do I. I think that's brilliant. I'm not invested personally in crypto at all for that exact reason, not because I don't believe in it, but just most of my net worth is sitting in Revix, which is totally long crypto. So for the time being, that makes no sense for me. Yeah.
I have a few friends who hold about 80% of their net worth. We're talking about like $3 to $5 million in just Bitcoin, and I find that very interesting. Like they have so much faith in the crypto space, more so than the U.S. dollar, despite being an American citizen and having lived in America for 30, 40 years.
I would agree with them. I was on a call earlier, and I mean, the figures in terms of just the amount of money that's been printed. I mean, Bloomberg came out today with an inflate. Well, Bloomberg announced, I
Right.
suppose, or reported back on the inflation reading that came out. That was, if I'm not mistaken, the highest in the last
Yes.
decade. It might even be the highest in record. And that's the sort of stuff where you're going like, okay, well, when you look back over 30 years, this is like my like Bitcoin hats that I'm going on, but you look back 30 years and you sort of see the price of goods becoming incredibly expensive. Like over time, you're going, well, shell, things got expensive, but it's actually no, your dollar or your rand.
Yeah.
The rand's way worse than the dollar, but like that currency has become just way, it's become worth less, like worth
Mhm.
maybe a dash less. But yes, like over the long term, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I personally would feel more comfortable having money in crypto than in US dollars right now as well.
Hmm. If you stayed in the corporate path for a few more years, would you hold predominantly in crypto?
I think I would have looked at, I mean, I have invested in a lot of like sort of high yield fixed income products. That's my special, like that's the area I love the most.
Hmm.
I just feel like the risk versus reward, provided that you get like this unique opportunity to finance something, that's sort of the space I enjoy the most. But yes, I would
Hmm.
definitely have a significant portion in crypto, and I think doing exactly what you're doing right now, where you're earning, fixed yield on a stablecoin reserve. I mean, what I was actually doing before was there's a few exchanges. BitMEX was one, Deribit was another, where you could take either a long or short position on the exchange, and they would
Hmm.
pay you a set yield depending on sort of what the funding rate was. Because remember, if you go into those exchanges, you're borrowing a lot of cryptocurrency, but sometimes that borrowing rate was negative. So it's like
Yeah.
all the trillions of dollars of debt in
Huh.
the world. And you were able to take advantage of that across two different exchanges. So essentially, making a profit. But again, this is like a fixed income play more than anything because you're not taking crypto risk.
Mhm.
And that was a strategy that worked out really well as well in the past.
What would you do you have you learned things recently that you feel you wish you knew 10 years ago?
Let me just get out like this gigantic book. Yeah, loads, 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 loads. First thing, which I think is something that I regret, is not having a founders agreement with one of my
Hmm.
co-founders for Revix. We went a year and 6 months down the Revix rabbit hole of starting the business. That's the
Hmm.
times when things are really uncertain. I bootstrapped the entire business myself as well. And he was a serial entrepreneur, an incredibly smart guy. But he had started a load of businesses, a lot of them had failed. And this was like sort of the next opportunity for him. And while he was starting Revix, he decided that, listen, he was like, well, you need some development work done, or should I say, we need some development work done. Let me start a e-commerce dev shop on the side that was
Hmm.
able to service you, and then we can bring developers on board, specialists, quants, etc., that can service you and potentially other clients. And I was totally down for this. I said that sounds fantastic, but they need to be exclusive to Revix for a set amount of time. So we agreed for a year that they would be working with Revix. And after about 6 months of this arrangement being in place, he landed up securing two really big clients
Hmm.
through that business. And he had the opportunity then to go and have his first profitable business ever, literally 1 month after signing the contract with them. And he looked at me and
Hmm.
was like, "There's no way, like I can do this Revix thing with you when there's that sitting on the side." So I was like,
I
"Well,
see.
let's let's talk about this." And that's like a polite way of saying like, yeah, that was not a comfortable sort of discussion. More from my side, I was really
Mhm.
I'm kind of frustrated by that. So that's the one thing that I would recommend all founders do. I think another thing is stress management. I mean, it's all fine and well. We can sit on this podcast or the video cast and be able to say like, oh, this business is so like, it's crazy. It's like ups and downs. But I think just like a drug addict, you have like serious episodes where you are like you generally walking the road alone. So that's challenging. I mean, I've lost two relationships during the course of Revix, which I can laugh
Mhm.
about now, but geez, having to like deal with that while you're running a business and being motivated with employees is super tough. So I think being cognizant of that, and I can't say, listen, you shouldn't be super obsessed that it costs your relationship or like there's no right advice around that.
Yeah.
I wish somebody had said to me, like, realize what you're about to sacrifice when you do this. It's not even for any other thing. It's just to like be cognizant. Like when people say like, listen, I've spent my youth working and they're a lawyer or whatever the story may be, and then you're like, oh, that's funny. Like I'll get to like life later. Like life gets away from you, and I think you blink, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, like 3 years have passed or 4 years have passed, and I haven't gone on holiday or something, which is sort of where I'm sitting at now,
Mhm.
where you're sort of saying, well, maybe I need a vacation. And I mean, for the first time in my entire life, deviating a little bit of what I'm talking about, but like for the first time in my entire life, I watched a very short advert on YouTube yesterday. It randomly came up with this like couple walking along a beach in Bali and then jumping in the water. And I sat there and I was like, oh my word, like I would really like to do that. That's never happened before, ever. I never had that like ad that like made me want to eat a burger or anything like that.
Mhm.
But this ad, I was like, oh my gosh. And I mean, you can see that like I need a tan, right? So like we can yeah. I think that's the two bits of advice. Obviously, I can continue for hours, but I think those are like the top two that I could recommend.
So what do you do when you're, well, I guess travel is a larger commitment to decompress, but in terms of like the day to day, you mentioned meditation earlier. Do you do anything else that you find very constructive for your stress management?
Yes, training, exercise on a daily basis is it's the thing that keeps me going.
Hmm.
And exercising hard, not exercising like, oh, cool, I'm gonna go take a walk on a treadmill or like lift 10 kilogram weights. No, like I'm going to go and kill myself at gym. And
Hmm.
it's just something that like switches, like it restarts everything and switches everything off and on again. It's for me, it's just, and again, it's probably becomes self-fulfilling because I'm saying that it does this. But for me, that's just the thing that works for me. What about yourself?
The placebo effect is very real. I'm trying to get, so I injured myself a few months ago, but I'm trying to get back into more hardcore training. I feel like COVID has made me realize I have all this free time and not many places to go, so I might as well take this opportunity to train hard at home. I do have a home gym, and that's really great. I'm really grateful to have that during COVID, but I have not had the health to keep up and push myself. And I'm also still in the routine, trying to push myself in my routine to make more and more time for each time. But I think it helps a lot. I also think I don't know if this is a universal thing, but if I want to sleep 8 hours, I'll allocate 9 to 10, just because I want to make sure that there's nothing that prevents me from having peak mental energy during the day, just because I feel like sleep is so crucial. So even if it's some people consider it a waste, at some level I do consider it a waste. It's like to waste extra hour, 2 hours, like trying to go to bed. But whatever, I think it's at least it works to get the end result that I want.
That's something I should definitely look at adopting. That sounds super smart. I'm the guy that's like in front of my PC and then I run off to bed. I'm like, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. It doesn't work. It totally doesn't work. How do you feel after you've been injured? I mean, I find for me that was like, not that I've been injured maybe over the last like 2 years or so, but back when I was trying to become a professional athlete, I was actually better at getting injured than I was at the sport. Like I was the best at getting injured. I got injured all the time, but I got super like frustrated after I got injured every single time. I don't know if that's the same with you.
That is the number one. I think frustration is the best word to describe it. Like you want this, you have this dream. You have this dream of reaching a certain level of strength, a certain level of like physique, and you have this thing that's holding you back, that's outside of your control, and it's just frustrating for me because nature has its own course of healing. Like no doubt that medical advances have gone incredibly far in the past 200, 300 years, but there's still a long way to go in terms of like I wish I could just like take a pill and have my arm instantaneously healed and ready to lift at full capacity again, but it just doesn't work that way.
No, not yet.
And I go this nasty cycle of like thinking I'm ready, and I feel like I agree that when I work out I want it to be exhausted by the end of it, so I push myself hard, and if I'm not pushing myself hard it doesn't really feel like a workout, but in the process I re-injure myself and like gosh darn it, I did it too soon. And
Yeah.
I had to space it out a little more each time to make sure I'm actually healing. At least that's what my doctor tells me.
I think that's what you have to do, right? Starting small, getting back into something. Again, so easy to say this, so much more difficult to do it.
I know, I know.
Don't do it either, don't worry. So it's, yeah, I think that's just the way we are.
For me, it's a difficult trade-off because I feel like I don't like I really use fitness as a means to like balance my emotional like bandwidth. And if I don't get that opportunity, then I feel like my days are out of whack. And so sometimes I'll force myself through the pain just because I feel like I'd rather have the increased emotional bandwidth at the expense of a little bit of physical pain.
A little bit of a sadist as well. I like it. Good. No, it's the same as me. Like, even if I've got like my knee at the moment, like it's annoying me more than anything, but I'll still go for that run because like in Cape Town in particular, right? So I don't know what it's like in Texas right now, but in Cape Town, like it seems normal. I mean, other than going out with a mask on, like there's literally no other
Mm.
restrictions. So there's people at bars, people. I don't think there's clubs. Unfortunately, I'm not there anymore. But you can go run along like the seafront promenade and along like the cliff faces, yeah, and all the rest. And like you're
Hmm.
100% right. I mean, that just sweet, that completely just refreshes your perspective on things.
Well, thanks again for your time. I just have one final question. What's the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you?
I would, I would love to say go ahead and email me, but I have been so terrible with email over the last while. So I think if somebody wants to get a hold of me, connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Sean, Sean, the Irish way of spelling Sean, Andrew Sanders. It's literally that simple. If you type that in, you'll find me, and I will be able to reply to you there. If you have any questions or if you need any assistance, yeah, please shoot me a message. I'm only too happy to reach out and help in whichever way I can. And yeah, I apologize in advance if I'm a bit slow with responding. There's quite a few people that have messaged me with regard to this last funding round, right? People being like old friends, congratulations or whatever. And I think David, you've probably been in the same position where you're like, I'm drowning in terms of just like a number of things that I have to do, and you can't hire somebody to do that. You have
Frequently.
to actually do that. So like, you've only got so
Right.
much time in a day. So I'm just asking, please, like, understand that as well. So sorry.